let's go ahead and get started. I'll advance us and say, hey, welcome to Silverquicken's Power of Play, Puzzles, and Perseverance. And actually, we should probably have four people on that slide below. Chris, Sheila, Jamie, and Leslie. We'll introduce ourselves in a moment here. And let's just talk about the problem for a second, and I'll take us off screen sharing in a second. And what brought you all here is probably some form of this question. How do we help our kids become persistent and resilient solvers? And at this point, I'd love to ask us all to introduce ourselves. I'll go ahead and start. My name is Chris Ryan, and I was a high school physics and chemistry teacher for a number of years. Went back to business school, met Leslie there, and went back into education for a number of more years. I won't add all the years up because then it might sort of give away my age, but it's up there. And then in 2020, co-founded Silverquicken with Leslie.
Great. I'm Leslie Kerner. I'm the other co-founder of Silverquicken. Spent much of my career in education technology and professional development, working with teachers and leaders across the country. Just wanted to thank you for joining us today with what we think is going to be a really fun and interesting conversation. I'm actually going to be off camera for most of the webinar. I'll be managing the Q&A. The chat is not activated today. That's disabled. But if you do have questions, feel free to put them in the Q&A. I'll either answer them as we go or refer you to one of the panelists. So you'll be well taken care of either way. Thanks so much.
And I'll kick it to Sheila. Do you want to go next and introduce yourself?
Yes, my name is Sheila Hurst. I am a high ability and STEM robotics teacher in Indiana, and I am new to Silverquicken, relatively new. This is my first year. I attended a National Association of Gifted Children conference in Indianapolis with the sole purpose of finding something like Silverquicken for my nonverbal high ability students, and I am so happy I met them there. Yes.
Right back at you. We're so happy we met you.
Thank you.
Fabulous. And Jamie, please go ahead.
Hi, I'm Jamie Ramsberg. I teach second grade. I'm a gen ed teacher, but I also have English language learners in my classroom. And I originally got my certificate teaching high school. And then I took some time off to do theater because that's also my background. And now I teach second grade, and I try as much as possible to bring my theater background and that creativity into the classroom. So Leslie and I live in the same town, and when she told me about Silverquicken, I was so excited and very grateful that she brought me on board this year. So this is also my first year with Silverquicken, but I'm really excited to see where it goes.
Fabulous. And it would be harder for it to be much more than your first year, given how young we are. We're walking as sort of toddlers, but we, 2020 to now. And part of that was we started completely online because that's what the fall of 2020 meant for most of us in some kind of way. So let's go to the agenda. We've just done introductions. I'm going to talk quickly about why puzzles, and I'll give you the short answer fast because they're fun and hard, so that we'll talk about what do I mean by fun, what do I mean by hard, and we'll also talk about how you make puzzles fun and how you make them hard. And along the way, I'll kick it to Jamie and Sheila. And then I'll wrap up with a little bit more about who we are and open it up for Q&A. We also have a special offer for you that if you stick around, please hear us out on that. And we'll, of course, give you the solution to that puzzle from the very beginning, which if you missed it, if you came in a little after the puzzle, in fact, what I might do really fast is just show it. There it is. Silverquicken knows puzzles. This is a hard puzzle. We'll come back to it at the very end, and also even another puzzle. So let me define what I mean first by a puzzle. We mean some kind of self-contained solvable mystery that yields to good scientific method. That is, you can figure it out. So it's not a mystery like, is the universe infinite? Like my son asks me that, well, we don't really know. And it's great to ponder, but that's not what we mean by puzzles. What we mean by puzzles are things like this on the right. And they're meant to be both fun and hard. And there's a solution to this crazy Trisk puzzle, as we call it. And it's pretty interesting looking as you look at it too. It's pretty fun. So likewise, over there on the left, some cool mazes that you might start solving and thinking about and being drawn into. So the fun part of it gives us the intrinsic motivation. I want to do this. I want to solve this puzzle. But then when you add in it's hard, that means, well, you can't just solve it like that. You need some perseverance to get through it. And that's where the fun helps keep you, the intrinsic motivation compels you to stick with it. You can see that puzzle over there on the right and at the bottom in red. And many of our puzzles have multiple layers to it. So you might think, oh, I can get through that maze pretty easy, but then there's another layer of meaning underneath. On top of that, what we mean by puzzles are things that are both bite-sized and meaty. So you could do one for 10 or 15 minutes on a Friday morning or something in your class, but do a few of those and they have real impact. They're actually, they have, they'll mean something. So maybe meaty is the wrong word here. I don't want to sound like it's a meatball. It's rather it's impactful. So bite-sized and healthy, nutritive, nutrient filled. Maybe we'll change it to that. So what do we mean by fun? There's this journalist, Catherine Price here, who wrote a book called The Power of Fun, actually after writing a book called How to Break Up with Your Phone. And when she broke up with her phone, she had all this free time, or not tons, but some, to get involved in some fun activities. And she kind of lit up and said, well, what is fun? Is there much research out there? And she found there was some, but then she also interviewed a bunch of people. And she came up with a definition of true fun that we have found very useful. True fun has three components. The first is its play. It's playful. It is not ordinary work. It's somehow low stakes. It's lighthearted. It's process oriented, not outcome oriented so much. So that playful nature is important for true fun. Then there's a connection element. You're highly engaged with the activity and also with other people. It's almost always with other folks. So there's a collective element to true fun. And finally, you get in the flow. You're in the zone. The difficulty of the activity is just right, and you kind of lose track of time. So it's not too easy, so it's boring. It's not too hard, so it's frustrating. It's just right in difficulty for you. And when something is fun like that, that we can find with our kids, then that gives them the intrinsic motivation. So with that, what I'd love to do, Jamie, can I ask you to talk about fun in your classroom and how you try to bring it through puzzles and other things that you do?
Absolutely. So I have to start off by telling a quick story about, I had my second graders reviewing their addition and subtraction with regrouping, and they were working on a worksheet, and up top, it was something I had found online, and it said fun on the top. And one of my students crossed off fun and wrote boring and turned it in. And I had a talk with him, and the truth was it was boring, right? And I say to my class all the time, I can't always be fun. Sometimes we have to do the boring work. I have to assess you in a certain way to make sure you understand how to do that. But then we have the fun parts. Those boring parts are kind of sprinkled in. So I like to bring a lot of fun into the classroom. We sing a lot of songs to help them remember things. And especially with second graders, you know, songs, jingles, chants, those are the ways that they remember, as opposed to telling them to start when they add and subtract to start in the ones. I make up a little ditty. When we're adding and subtracting, we always start with the ones. And that gets ingrained in their head. So we do a lot of that. We play a lot of games. And then I've started putting together, Silverquicken inspired me to start doing more of these types of puzzles. So I found a few online, but to make it a little harder, which I know we're going to talk about in the next slide, I white out the directions. So
Mm.
they get an example, they get to work together. Like you said, Chris, one of the things, their favorite things to do is work in a group, whether it's on a puzzle, whether it's in a game, whether it's reading. They love to make that connection, and any activity I give them is more fun if they're working together.
Mhm.
And they ate these puzzle packets up. They were so excited to work on it. One group would go to another group and whisper to them, trying to figure it out together. And they're learning. And they're showing me that they can add, that they can subtract. There was multiplication. And all the while, they're having fun doing it. And the best thing is when they come out of a fun activity and they've learned so much, and they don't realize they've learned. You know, like they're not like, oh, that was a learning activity. They just say, oh, we played this really fun game, or we did this fun puzzle, but they really learned the lesson that we were supposed to teach them. And I'll just say one other thing, that with English language learners, they're in a place where they're all at different levels of English. And so some of them really don't understand a lot of what we're doing in class. Games, puzzles, things that are fun will bring them in, and there are ways that we can use what they know to make it even more fun for them, and it just helps them to feel more comfortable in the class too.
It kind of reflecting a part of that back, the play element, whether it's songs or it's the collective, it seems like you're kind of making it other than ordinary. And that
Absolutely.
gives kind of permission for a kid who might otherwise feel like maybe some of your English learners on the outside, or maybe not connecting with something else. Oh, I can participate in this.
Yes, and I absolutely find that when we are singing songs or playing games, that's when I get the most participation out of my students who are more hesitant to raise their hands. I get very silly in class with them. I always make sure they know, we can get silly as long as we come back from it. But giving them that chance to be silly puts them at ease and makes them feel like it's accessible to them.
Oh, Jamie, I wish I'd had you as my second grade teacher, just to say, I mean, this is honest. Unfortunately, my second grade teacher was not as good as you. So if only. I love what you do in the class. Let me go to a little bit of, I'm just going to some research on why intrinsic motivation. There's a lot of research quickly that it works better. It has a longer lasting impact when you want to do it and a kid wants to do something rather than being forced to do it or coerced, or my son asked me this morning on the way to school, like, if I go to Spanish today, and I do that every week, like during school, can I get $5? And I was not happy about that. Like, I'm not paying for school, and I totally did not deal with it that well in the moment, because I'm like, and I even started saying it's extrinsic motivation that you have one, and it was the wrong way to handle it on my part, I'll admit. But there's so much extrinsic motivation around things from outside that our kids are exposed to. And there he is wanting, my 8-year-old wanting $5 to go to his Spanish class. And that's not going to really last. There's tons of research that tells us, hey, if you're intrinsically motivated if you find the puzzle fun, you're going to spend more time with it and you're going to pick it up later. And again, this was on the recording that we'll send you afterwards. So I'm not going to read you these bits of research, but just so you have them. One of the worst things about extrinsic motivation, which is part of life, we have to deal with it, but not only is it like kind of purely short term, and as soon as you turn it off goes the motivation. My kid might not be going to Spanish without $5. Is it hinders performance on thinking tasks. So there's some good research that shows if you put pressure on people and ask them to do something for a bonus, and if that bonus gets big, you think, oh, they're going to do better. Yes, if it's not cognitive, but if it requires cognition, even rudimentary cognitive skills, as it says here, the offer of a higher bonus led to poorer performance. At some point, that stress overwhelms the motivating influence. So yeah, people really wanted in this study the bonus, but that desire actually put blinders on and they weren't able to solve the puzzle. So let's flip over to what is hard. And here's another researcher, Manu Kapur, talks about, he actually calls it productive failure, but a lot of folks, and ourselves included, call it productive struggle. It's a little nicer. And we don't do this often enough, where we start with the challenge, with the problem first, and it should be the right difficulty for the kids, or maybe a little stretch, but they don't know yet, but you're calibrating it. You're activating prior knowledge, but you're not walking through it. This is not direct instruction. And then you give them time to struggle. You let them go down wrong paths. You let them hit the dead ends. And you are trying to normalize some frustration with whatever the problem or puzzle is. And then at the end, safely, we're bringing them all in for a landing. Everybody is on the same page about the solution. So it's kind of a safe, curated way to encourage the productive struggle. And it winds up, according to meta studies, having 2 to 3 times the learning impact of regular direct instruction. And it builds perseverance. We're actually practicing it out. So with this, I'd like to kick it to you, Sheila, to talk about how you think about productive struggle and building perseverance with your kids, both Silverquicken and other things that you do that are that build problem-solving skills.
Sure. In my high ability classrooms, working with kids in grades K through 5 for reading and math, I have over 150 kids every day in 11 different classes. And I often find that these are students that things come so easily for them in the traditional classroom. And sometimes looking at that flow model on that lower end, you start to see some of those behaviors with boredom. And without that challenge, they don't develop some of the skills, and it affects them as they get into their older middle and high school years, where they aren't building up perseverance and they aren't having to face a lack of confidence, and how do I deal with those emotions and the feelings that come with that. So I feel like it helps develop confidence. It helps them learn how to better problem solve, which are skills they don't necessarily get when they're not faced with strong challenge, productive challenge. In my family, we often live by this motto in which we compare challenge to the great north wind that helped form the Vikings. And so when we start reaching those points of frustration, as we talk about in that flow model, and how we deal with that, we're also remembering that's part of what builds us into who we are and makes us stronger. And so giving those opportunities to the young people through Silverquicken is actually truly both fun and challenging. And I have one student who he's one of my nonverbal learners. One of the reasons why I sought out Silverquicken at that conference, after coming to his first Silverquicken class, I saw a change in him in the high ability classroom. And he very excitedly said to me one day, "Mrs. Hurst, you understand my brain."
Oh.
Right? And that just really touched me, because he's one of those students that I was wanting to find a new way to reach, because where he wasn't having success and was meeting with too much challenge, I wasn't reaching out to him in the right kind of way for him and his brain. And these puzzles and these mysteries have helped me to reach him. So I'm very grateful for that. That kind of a building of grit in students and that perseverance. And we often talk about the puzzles either being an apple where you take a bite out of it and you're one and done, which is a lot like one-step problems in the classroom, with the challenge of the the onion multi-leveled, multi-layered puzzles. It's you think you see, but then you keep wondering about what else is happening here. Why doesn't it feel like I have an answer yet? And that is directly relating to my students as they're doing their 2 and other multiple step problems. What else is there? And being able to answer some of those questions. And then I think whether it's failure or success, either way, we're leading to successful responses, and we have those great feel good aha moments that they've gotten to themselves.
Right.
Hard
And
work.
sorry, I was going to ask also, and you do some other things too. You do robotics, you do Girls Who Code. We're not the only ones doing problem solving by any
Yes.
means, in kind of a leading with struggle kind of way. And how do you calibrate it as you go? How do you make sure that you're not hitting too much of either the boredom or the frustration?
I think a lot of it comes with monitoring them, being a good listener, and patient to the struggle, being patient to whatever struggles they're having, giving some guided questions to help them come up with their own answers, without saying, well, this is how you solve that problem. I have to sit on my hands so I don't talk.
It's so hard. It's so hard
Right?
to not step in. We and it comes from a good place, and that's what makes it almost like more tempting, because it's like, oh, I just want to help you. Do you want some help? When actually the help might be, I'm going to maybe redirect you a little bit, but I'm not going to step in as much.
Yes.
I say all the time, Sheila, that productive struggle takes the most patience from the teacher. Be able to guide, but wait, and to give them that time to think through it and not feel rushed.
Yeah.
And I always tell my students, because, you know, second graders, the hands are always going up, and they know when someone is working on something, when they have an answer in their head and they need to adjust it, all our hands stay down. I'm with them. They are working through that, and they're given the time. But it does take a lot of patience from the teacher to give them the time to struggle.
And I think time is an important piece that you bring up, because we as teachers have to manage our time. I have 30 minutes for each class, and that includes travel. We are constantly the keepers of time. And when we see that time running out, we tend to get a little anxious to step in. And I'm recalling one night when I was wanting to step in and get us moving, because we had to get out of our classroom and up to the parents who were waiting there for the students. It's an after school program for me with Silverquicken, by the way. And I was anxious to wrap it up and help solve that problem. And I would say a mutiny is a good way to describe what I was facing. If I were to dare tell them, it became kind of comical. And I was like, I do need to be a manager of time, but I don't need to give the answers because we're out of it. We just continue at another time, right?
Right.
Absolutely.
Right.
Tomorrow's another day.
That's so good. That illustrates very much like you've gotten your Silverquicken group to this point of they're well practiced now. They're more practiced with productive struggle, and it takes practice. I mean, we know that it creates better and deeper learning. It even enables changes in your self-concept. Oh, I must not be so bad at math because I have proof. I actually did that math puzzle. But it can be demotivating at first. There's this example of a study done with Harvard physics classes where it was shown that kids in the active classroom taking the physics in an active way, solving the problems, they learned more according to a pre and post testing regime, but they felt like they learned less because they struggled. They initially take that effort to signify poorer learning. So when they struggled to learn the stuff in the classroom, they interpreted that struggle to mean, oh, I must not be good at physics. As opposed to, wait a second, that struggle is actually the point of making you better at physics. That's how you learn it. And these are kids who have done very well to get there in our system. So we aren't normalizing enough of the productive struggle. Now let's switch back to how do you take a puzzle and make it fun? Like you can find a puzzle and you say, okay, I want to do puzzles. How do I make them fun? Here's one way is don't tack on the extrinsic motivation. Don't turn it into extra credit. Don't, say, well, these are worth this many points. You can come up with a whole class kind of long-term reward if you want, but try to avoid the like taking something that should be intrinsically fun and making it extrinsically rewarding. Context equals pretext. What I mean here is that even a thin context, it could be something like, hey, we're all part of a spy training school. There's a series of books called Spy School. And we're part of a spy training school, and we're going to receive secret messages and decode them. And that's enough to make kids feel like they're stepping outside the everyday and committing to whatever that story is and being lighthearted. We have at Silverquicken a whole fantasy story that we've been developing actually with our kids to a kind of universe that lets our real life kids step outside of the everyday. But even a small context gives permission, lets kids sort of set down their bags of rocks and join. And then flow equals fun. When you hit that flow point, then you gotta you're doing well, so you've got to differentiate on the fly. This encouraging grit and growth mindset with kid-friendly reframes. Those are some of the ways we do in Silverquicken of promoting terms like cocoon and butterfly. The butterfly has to break out of the cocoon to fly. And then the kids say, wait, it's a chrysalis. And that's funny, sort of. And so as a result, it's a way that kids can remember, yeah, I got to break out of this cocoon too. So that's a theme that we use, but you can do any kind of kid-friendly reframe instead of using the term growth mindset, which isn't as kid-friendly. And then stonewalling it first, that's kind of the same idea of like holding off, and then we go. So any other things to add on how we make puzzles fun? I'll kick it to either of you, Sheila, Jamie.
I think the immersion of some of the puzzles into the story really excites the kids. It's almost like they're living out those chapters with the characters within the story.
Yeah, that's deliberate. So it's hard to do, but that's kind of one of the things we're trying to do. And whether you do it with Silverquicken or in some other way, like actually spending a little bit of time to build a story around a puzzle is worth it.
Absolutely. And I would just like to add, for the differentiation, I think that is key, especially in a general education class, but across the board, everyone's going to get to a spot and maybe need a little push. Not everyone, but most of them will need, and they come to you, whatever puzzle it is, whatever challenge, problem, they come to you for the little nudge. And it's knowing which hint to give, right? Maybe it's a matter of, look at that again. What do you see? What do you wonder about it? How are they related? Or if you need to go a little deeper with the hint, but figuring out exactly, like you said, stonewalling at first, no help, no hints, but then as they get stuck, finding just the right hint to give each individual group wherever, to meet them where they are.
Yeah, and I think building on that, when you come to that, what do you wonder about what you're seeing? And they're starting to verbalize those connections. Well, what if you tried that? How would that look if you tried it out? Does it work?
Yeah.
Right. So kind of even getting over the reluctance to put pencil to paper or to, that's in we have a system, scientific method is reframed in Silverquicken as see, wonder, pretend test. And it's very deliberate that we say pretend instead of hypothesize. And now, because we want to make it, hey, it's just make believe. Let's just pretend that's true. It's no risk. Let's just try it. That's very deliberate. Yeah, these are all great ideas about how to, and we don't want to actually, when that kid is stuck, like you said, Jamie, to then like, all right, I'm shoving you over this thing. I'm removing the obstacle. No, it's still like, as a friend calls it in their program, District C, that works with high schoolers, they call it nudging the raft. It's not picking up the raft and getting it off the rocks and putting it down safely past the rapids. It's just nudging it. And they can do it.
Yeah.
And then they have that satisfaction. If you pick up the raft and move it to the end, well, you know, the teacher solved it for you. But if you just give them that little nudge, then they get to leave feeling that they solved it.
And I've done that. I have picked up the raft and put it downstream in.
We all have.
Yeah, I've done it, and it's like, okay, I still sometimes do it, and I catch myself and try to before and then dump them in the river by accident. I'll stop the metaphor at this point. Let's talk about making puzzles hard. One way is to really rebuild them for scientific method. What we mean by that is you can take out the instructions. If you have too many instructions, then it's really like execute this recipe, you know, take an egg and crack it. And hey, there's value to learning a recipe. But for a puzzle, take out some of the instructions and see if they can figure it out. Think of video games. Video games have very few instructions, and they're designed to be fun and hard at the same time. Well, a lot of the way that's done is like, let the kids figure it out. I'm going to show you in a minute a way we constructed, like you were talking about, Sheila, the onion puzzles, the multi-step puzzles, out of simpler puzzles. So that's one way you can take a couple of easier things, a maze and a cipher, and make a cipher maze. And then this last point, making the required thought process fair to all. It's really easy to make it kind of like a trick in the sense of like, oh, you had to have some weird arcane knowledge or something that only a few people would have. A lot of our puzzles just require the alphabet. And if you have more required knowledge in that, then plan to activate that and plant the clues and hints. And whether that's on the paper or in the activity itself, or like you were talking about, Jamie, like when they come for it, what's the sort of minimal hint you could give? And then differentiating, again, sort of this also helps keep it appropriately hard, and normalizing struggle. So you were making this point too about like, what else, both of you, what else do you see? Sort of simple questions that they can learn to ask themselves. What else do I see? And that focuses the attention on the right thing for them to think about without telling them what to think about it. It's like, take a look at that over there. And it's just like sort of pointing to something. And then very importantly, reframing failure as success. In fact, hey, by running down that wrong road and running into that dead end, you eliminated you did something valuable for our whole problem solving process, which is you eliminated that wrong path. And we've got to celebrate that over and over. So then that permits the puzzle to be hard. Any comments on all of this sort of angle from either one of you?
I think we kind of preempted the slide.
We kind of did, yeah. It's like, oh, we just talked about that. I do want to show what I mean by the multi-step challenge. Here's a case in point. We were just at a couple of conferences and gave this puzzle to educators and did what do you see? What does it make you wonder? And what could you pretend that idea is true and test it out? This puzzle has multiple things going on in it. It's got mazes. It's got these numbers that are kind of a cipher. And then there's this path of the second syllable thing. This is a hard puzzle. This isn't one you can just look at and sort of do. And I caught educators doing that, just looking at it and trying to figure it out in their head. It's like, okay, now let's crack the seal here. Let's go ahead and pretend that's the case. Start to draw your way through the maze and so forth and see what happens. And I will give you the ending on that. Let me go to Silverquicken. What we're about is unique enrichment for 3rd through 8th graders. It's set in this fictional secret school of Silverquicken. We have 2 major products right now. One is this Quest Club here. It's puzzle subscriptions, puzzles wrapped in a story, like you were saying, Sheila. And that's both for homes for individual use. And we now have a classroom edition of that. And I'll talk more about that with the offer later on. And then the after school, we have on-site clubs. And those are the things that Jamie and Sheila do with us and in a number of other schools around the country. and they're filled with puzzles and games and stories. We kind of think of ourselves in a number of different ways. One part of our mission is sort of bringing the best of gifted education for all, to everyone, opening doors to taking the best of like creative and challenging and collaborative education, and opening that up to more and more people, and reawakening the wonder and joy and love of learning. And we think about a lot, we actually use these terms, and there are also other terms we use for solvers, creators, and leaders. That's what we're aiming to develop. Our model is we lead with fun, that leads to rigor, and that leads to community. So that's the fun and the hard part. We have fun tackling tough challenges together. And we use puzzles, games, and stories. And we set them in this other world where it's safe to struggle and grow. So fun and hard puzzles can give your kids these play-based opportunities. Doesn't take a lot to give them these opportunities. Make great puzzles a part of your teaching arsenal. We're going to stick around to answer questions and open it up for questions right now as a crucial part of what we do. But special webinar only offer 3-month Quest Club Classroom Edition. It's designed for 24 students. We already pulled down the cost a ton to make it really work in classrooms to 240. We're gonna do, we're losing money on this. I sound like I'm selling used cars or something. We're losing money on this one, but we want you to bring it home. $99 through Sunday. Go to silverquicken.com/conference. You can use this QR code, point your camera at the screen right now, and just fill in this this form, and in the notes field say that you were with the webinar, and you'll get that deal. And we want to open it up for your questions. I will just go ahead and show there's references, and I have solutions after this, but we're going to wait on the solutions. We're going to take it off screen and kick it open for questions.
Before we take questions, can I just reiterate that It is gifted, it is the best of gifted education, but for all. So
Absolutely.
again, I teach the Silverquicken after school that I do is for Gen Ed 3rd through 5th graders at my school. So any 3rd through 5th grader can sign up. They are mostly not from our gifted and talented program, and they have a blast, and they solve the puzzles, and they work together, and it is fun, and it is hard, and it's wonderful. So I teach 2nd grade, and they don't have Silverquicken for 2nd grade yet, but if I taught 3rd through 5th, I would absolutely be using it in the classroom. So I just wanted to reiterate that it is not only for our highest achievers, our gifted and talented, that all levels, all learners can use these puzzles and achieve and succeed and feel really good about themselves. So
Now, that's also the model of my after school program, grades 3 through 5, of all ability levels. It's open to everyone, and everyone is finding that they are having fun and being successful. Yeah.
No, that is exactly our mission. Part of what we're trying to do with these puzzles and games and this story is make challenges that require everyone, that require a group, that require teamwork, and everyone can contribute to, I saw this one thing over here. And so there's not enough that's done in school that sort of requires that, but that's what we want to do, is sort of create opportunities and push towards teamwork. So being asked the key differences between the after school club and the in-class time club. So the after school club, it has games and like a whole curriculum built in, such that, and it's flexible, it's 6 to 12 weeks at this point. We're making it even longer, such that it could go a whole school year. But by being after school, it's also kind of like set up differently with a school. The classroom edition of the Quest Club came from our experience at the NAGC conference where we met you, Sheila, last fall. A number of teachers looking at our Quest Club kit for individual use, which is puzzles within a story. There's not really games because it was originally designed for individual use at home. a lot of people said, oh, I'd love to use this with my classroom. Is there a way we can bring down the price and make it more cost effective such that I can bring it into my classroom? Yes, I won't have all the games and so forth. So the after school is kind of a more elaborate program with games and other activities built in. The Quest Club in school that we have the offer on is primarily puzzles, but within a story. So there's still this stepping outside of the ordinary and going into this other place with the fictional kids of Silverquicken to encounter challenges. So the philosophy is the same, but those are the key differences. Other questions? Looking at the Q&A. Thank you for typing in your thoughts, and thank you for being here. Should we go ahead and I want to give you these solutions, but is this me just giving it away? Am I falling into that thing where I'm just like, okay, here's the solution, and that's not productive struggle? But I want to give them to you so that you have them, if you and so that they're in the recording, so you can refer to them.
Can I mention that the multi-step puzzle that you showed everyone? I had that sitting on the table when they came in, never really said a word about it. They knew just to start looking at it. They solved that so quickly. And there was, if I said my recall is there's 3 steps to that problem: making it through the maze, getting the numbers, converting those to letters, and then doing the syllable piece. Was that 4 steps? I don't know. Anyways, they solved that so fast. And that sense of community of, I just found, I just did you see? What does that mean? And they're so excited. And to be in that room and be a part of that and feel like, you were the giver of the gift, of these great glory and praise kind of moments that they're sharing together, it feels really good as a teacher.
Oh, that's so good. I'm going to go back
that came without instruction. They just made that solution happen.
Well, I just did that for, it was almost a couple hundred people over the last and with adults, I'll tell you, it was not like that. and maybe it's because in some cases the adults, not the kids, in some cases there was too much space between them, and that let people do kind of work on their own, and they weren't like gonna collaborate with a stranger as much and so forth. So we have a lot to learn from the kids, don't we?
Yeah. And I think the kids came with the previous classes and having this sense of there's always something more with Mrs. Hurst. There's always something more. It's not done yet. I know it's not done. There's something else. Let's find it. Yeah.
Right, because the natural thing, I'm going to go ahead and start drawing this like, oh, there's an arrow and there's a gap there, and I might start trying to find my way into the center. And what I've sometimes observed is people sort of find their way to the center, and then they say, oh, I'm done. And they say, really? Okay, so what? So what did you figure out? Oh, I just found my way into the maze. And that's like, well, there's more to that. Oh, what's the best puzzle you've ever created used is a question that we've gotten. And this is a pretty good one. That one at the beginning, it's often when I'm creating a puzzle, if I can find a cool way to do layers, then that to me feels like more than just like, hey, creating a Sudoku or just creating a plain maze. That's really interesting. More power. That's all good. There's totally room for that. Not everything has like the multiple layers, but like when it's a good onion, then you're cooking. Sorry, cooking joke. How about you all, Jamie and Sheila? Puzzles and what's a really good puzzle that you've used? And it doesn't have to be one of ours, of course.
I've asked that question of the Silverquicken kids, like, what's your best, most favorite puzzle so far? Leading up into that event that's coming up that we've talked about. And they're just like, all of them.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
That's
My students love the ciphers. They
Mm,
always, the ciphers, if we could spend 3 sessions on ciphers, they would.
I
yeah.
would say, and I came back because I was inspired by this question. I think I'm not the person who writes most of the puzzles at Silverquicken. Chris does a lot of them. We have some other team members, but I did write a cipher one time with a made up language that's an in-universe language called Curlic or Curlicue, and it made symbols for different letters. And that was one of my favorite because it was something that they didn't even know how to decode it. They had to kind of figure out through context. And then in a different part of the quest, they had a little cheat sheet with the alphabet translation. And so I thought that was pretty fun too. So like
Yeah.
you said, an oniony kind of puzzle that has many layers is fun. And then one that is, I think a lot of puzzles that look visually interesting are also fun because kids really kind of get into that as the pretext context thing that you mentioned earlier too.
I want to tack onto that, this kind of escape room feel. If any of you have done escape rooms, a lot of the real pleasure of a great escape room or a kind of board game thing where you're solving a mystery, even Clue, is that there's something you don't realize is a clue or that it's over there and you don't know what it is yet. And then you make a connection with this distant piece. And sometimes when we just give, here's this one sheet and it's a puzzle, there are mysterious things on it, but they might think, oh, it's all on there. Whereas your Curlicue puzzle, the way we had set that up is that there was a clue somewhere else, and then you're solving the cipher over here, and you make that, oh, that's how I see this comes together. And that's the kind of thing that we want to do more and more of, and we're building into both our after school and our Quest Club more and more ways in which kids are just making the connection between disparate pieces of information where it just kind of came up, there was a setup, but you didn't realize it was necessarily a whole setup or what to do with it. And then sometime later, oh, I see how to connect that. And just that's pure joy. What I'd like to do is also then go ahead and show you. You ready for the solution? What do y'all think? Panelists, or should we go ahead and show the solution reveal? I kind of want to walk through the whole thing. Like, what do you see? What do you notice? You notice them.
We could give permission, Chris, for people to, if they need to exit now and they want to just see it in the recording, they could do that too. So we will not feel badly if you do that.
Yes.
But please do, if you have other questions, please just stick around. You can type them into the chat. We'll answer them live as we've been doing.
Yeah. Okay, here it goes. For the sake of your sanity, can you solve this now? And what it is that you fill in that grid over here, and it's almost all the alphabet. It's just there's no Z. That's why we say it's the no Z puzzle or nose puzzle. And then the arrows, the sort of zigzags, give you let you spell out words. And then the circle mazes, likewise here. So you find your way into the center. You get a string of numbers. One thing that I've seen recently with folks is like, oh, I'm passing through here, and so is 7 also count or not? Well, you try it out and you find out it doesn't work to count the 7 too. When you convert those numbers to letters based on what position they are on the alphabet, which is a kind of thing that we do on more than one occasion in Silverquicken, you get an almost word, let balls and simbers and numters, and then this mysterious thing in the middle, path of the second syllable. You rotate those second syllables around and you finally create the correct words, letters, symbols, and numbers, which are the building blocks of the hardest mazes. So we try to wake our puzzlers, our solvers up to all kinds of aspects of letters and numbers and words and looking at them in different kinds of ways. Yes, we certainly hit beyond just like pure problem solving. There are also things that you could tick off on standards that we wind up doing, but fundamentally it's about problem solving. And
Chris, I think someone asked if you could put the other puzzle, the Silverquicken nose puzzle, if you could put that
one there as well.
Yeah, so
let me actually erase the slides here, or erase the ink on the slide. So there's that puzzle.
And then we have another question about, are there different kits for different grade levels of the Silverquicken kits? We don't have different kits for different grade levels, though there is quite a range. The puzzles can be used for quite a range of grades. So we have used them from everyone from 3rd grade to 8th grade, really. And actually some of them are, some of our logic puzzles that we always say are kind of difficult enough. We always tell kids that these are kind of some logic puzzles that are, you know, LSAT level logic puzzles. So the puzzles themselves are quite difficult, but with the context, with the scaffolding, with the hints, with the scientific method that all, you know, the team has mentioned here, they can be done as early as kind of 3rd grade. As Jamie mentioned, it is very top of mind for us to design puzzles for some of our youngest learners. And so we're working with her and others to figure out how we can build K through 2. That doesn't, you know, require as fluent a reading level as some of the other puzzles. So.
Chris, they're asking for the solution to the nosy puzzle.
Aha, there it is. So when you fill in, thank you, I was missing that. When you take A, B, and you fill in the rest of the alphabet here, you find, hey, it gets all the way down to Y, so it actually fits. And that's one of those things when you see wonder and you pretend, hey, let's pretend this actually is the alphabet in order. And then you test it out, it does fit. And then you have a grid here. And then you say, well, how does that map to here? Well, this letter here would be an N, and in the same position there, it's an N, and then an O and a W. So you're tracing your way around this grid as it is on the right. Other questions? So then an extension activity off of this is, oh, what could you do to add in Z? For instance, can you solve this puzzle? Well, maybe you go off the grid. How could you write your name? What would be words that would be hard to write using this? So there are ways that when you have a rich puzzle, you can do extension activities off it as well.
And one thing that we have discovered, and some of our teachers have even brought this to us as ideas, is having, you know, once you teach a type of puzzle, have the kids create their own, have them dig deeper, have them look for other ways to extend it. And that really, I mean, as we know, kind of doing something yourself really helps them learn it. But with puzzles, it's even more fun because then they can take it and puzzle their sibling or take it and puzzle their parent. And we found that has been something that they've really enjoyed. Right.
So go beyond solver to creator and leader. So I'm going to create something inspired by this thing I just solved. Exactly. All right. Well, we're almost at the top of the hour, as they say. So happy to stick around for any other questions. You can also email us at info@silverquicken.com if you'd like.
Thank you so much.
Thank you all so much. Let me take us off sharing and wave bye. Thanks all.
Thank you.
Thank you.